So, good afternoon, everybody. I do this quite a lot, and wherever I go, the big thing I always think about, because I know the presentation, the big thing I think about is, what's the icebreaker? What's the thing I say to you all when I stand up on the platform that makes you all laugh a bit, go, wow, this is a person we can connect to? And what I was going to do is I was going to say something in Turkish. But Ewan did that. He stole my intro. So I thought, right, what else? I'll tell you something about me, about my family, something personal. I'll tell you where my family comes from. And this is absolutely true. My family come from Scotland. And not just anywhere in Scotland, they come from Perthshire. So that one's off the table. I can tell you about my 2 kids, but Ewan's got 2 kids. So I thought, fine, I know what I'll do. I'll tell you where I live now. Imagine my delight when I watched Ewan's presentation and we got to a picture of Parker's Piece in Cambridge, about 200 meters away from my house. So all of my personal history is basically Ewan's personal history, so I'm not going to go into that. I was going to tell you about Automation Anywhere, but you've heard quite a lot about it, because I could talk about fastest growing enterprise software company, massive growth at RPA, but Tansu covered all of that. UiPath and Automation Anywhere, we are competitors. We know each other very well. I have some very good friends. Guy Kirkwood, who's our chief evangelist, is a good guy. I listened to the presentation. I got someone to translate. I thought it was great. I agreed with all of it. I listened to Ewan's presentation about the future of work, about augmentation, about taking the robot out of the human, which is what I want to talk about. And what I want to do is I want to dig a bit deeper into some of the stuff that Ewan talked about. So I want to talk about taking the robot out of the human. There's a university, part of London University, called Goldsmiths, and we commissioned some research with them. They did a 3-month program completely independently. We funded it, but apart from that, we had no say in it at all. And they talked to 400 industry leaders around the world, in the US, in the UK, in India, in the Far East, in Japan. They talked to decision makers in industry, they talked to futurists, I think they talked to some science fiction novelists. They were trying to get an idea of what's the possibility in the future? How are we using robotics, RPA, software automation, how are we using those technologies today? Are we succeeding? Are we succeeding in taking the robot out of human, making work more human? We asked lots of questions. We asked questions about the business, about profitability, about productivity, investment, all that good stuff, repetitive work. We asked questions that people care about work-life balance, engagement. Are you being listened to? We asked about AI. We asked about both rules-based automation, and we asked about cognitive automation. What do people think? Are they working? Are people getting access to these technologies? And that was the big question that came up. As Goldsmith worked through this, they realized the big question was, are people getting value for money? Are human workplaces getting the most out of augmentation technology investments? We looked at different sectors. And the difference between the sectors was quite striking. 71% of staff in manufacturing companies felt that their companies were giving them access to automation technologies. They were able to take advantage of them. Banking and insurance, the number was lower. Sorry, banking and finance, the number was lower. 55 to 60% of people felt engaged, felt they had access, felt their companies were taking advantage of these new automating technologies. Insurance was very different. Only 47% of respondents felt that their companies were taking advantage of the new automating technologies. And maybe those numbers aren't a surprise. If you look at manufacturing, whenever you think about manufacturing, automotive, all that good stuff, it conjures up images of robots, physical robots on the assembly line putting things in place. So my view is that manufacturing companies are inherently more open to automation, whether it's physical robots, whether it's software robots. But insurance companies, far less so. So maybe there's a danger there for an insurance company. If they don't embrace these technologies, will there be a challenger company, a native digital, or a legacy insurance company who's embracing automation to make that journey to being a digital company? Is there going to be a challenger company that competes far more effectively against them because they are embracing automation? We looked at different markets. Again, there were some big differences. In the US, people didn't feel that the companies on the whole around 50% of people felt that their companies were taking advantage of automation, that their companies were offering access to automation, that their jobs were being enhanced, were being made easier by automation. In India, very different. Over 81% of companies we talked to felt that they were taking advantage of automation. A similar number came out when we talked to their workforces. Do you feel you have access to the tools you need to drive automation in what you're doing? And the answer was yes. Similar numbers, maybe slightly less in the UK. In Japan, again, less so. So we found that these differences across different verticals, across different geos, were actually quite stark. But the conclusions were more interesting. We looked at two different sets of conclusions. We wanted to look at it from the people side, because this is about the future of work. We feel as a company that we have a duty as part of the new wave of industrial revolution, as part of the vendors, part of the infrastructure, creating that future work, changing the workplace. We feel we have a duty of care to make that workplace better. It was very heartening earlier to see so many hands up saying, do you feel optimistic about it? We found in augmented workplaces, and let's be really clear about that. We looked very carefully, or Goldsmith looked on our part very carefully into what happens when you use technology to augment your workforce. And as Ewan says, this ain't anything new. For the last 190 years, people have been using technology to augment what they do, whether it's a lawnmower, whether it's a seed drill, spinning jenny. Go back more recently, things like spreadsheets. We used to have rooms full of people adding up numbers to give us those insights into data. Now everyone has Excel. So technology has always been there to augment us. We found in those augmented workplaces, workers were nearly 40% more engaged than in non-augmented companies. 70% of those respondents said augmentation had improved the well-being of their team. And that's very different from the results of their team. That's well-being. 78% of people said it freed people up from repetitive work. And we hear that a lot, that RPA, cognitive technologies can take people away from repetitive work. But the implication of that, of taking the robot out of the human, finding the things, the tasks, the jobs, the roles, the bits of roles that humans are very good at, and letting them focus on that. In the video earlier, the woman saying, I can refine my ad campaigns. I can think of new creative stuff. That's great. Let's get humans to focus on that stuff. Robots much better at doing that repetitive stuff. So it seems to be good for the human workforce. As for the business, again, we saw similar numbers. Those augmented organizations, they achieved 28% higher performance. Financial performance was similarly better. They're more likely to prioritize strategic goals. Why? So how many of you out there have spent hours and hours and hours trying to get a board report done, a report for your manager, or something that is basically a rule-based, I need to shuffle numbers around and come up with this thing, whereas what you really want to be doing is thinking, what's the next big marketing campaign? What's the next big product? Where do we take the business? Because robots can't do that. A robot isn't going to make that leap forward, that leap of faith, to think about what's the new strategic direction of the business. Humans can do that, but robots can't. And the more we take those distractions, those day-to-day, rules-based, repetitive, drudge work away, the more it frees people up to prioritize strategic goals, the more it improves performance, better financial performance. Robots don't make mistakes. You ask somebody to copy 10,000 numbers from here to here, how many do they get right? 99%? 99.9%? Robots don't make mistakes like that. Yes, there are other things humans are better at. They're better at dealing with errors, but you can figure your way around that. So that performance boost of human and machine was huge. Even more, though, we found where you had technology augmenting humans, those organizations invested in that technology to augment humans outperformed those invested only in the technology. But more than that, where they invested in training, where they let people access that technology, it supercharged results. Results were even better. And that makes total sense. If I say to you, who's got a garden out here? Stick your hand up if you've got a garden. Come on, someone's got a garden. Don't be shy. No one here has a garden. Gentlemen there, thank heavens for you. And you have a lawnmower? Right. So if I gave you a brand new lawnmower, super augmented, it's got semi-AI in it to do everything, without a training manual, I would say it won't work as well for you as if we teach you how to use it. And that's the same with all technology. Excel, brilliant tool. We use it all the time. It's also a red flag that your underlying systems are broken if you're using Excel, because Excel is only there for one thing, to surface data out of your underlying systems, let you play around with it, and then put it back. I wrote an article the other day saying Excel is basically a massive red flag. But anyway, I digress. Excel, fantastic piece of kit, but Excel is far, far more powerful if you train people how to use it. Pivot tables, they're not an obvious thing. Some of us wake up in the middle of the night sweating and panicking about pivot tables. Teach someone how to use a pivot table, and it's great. It's a very powerful thing. So that combination not only of technology to augment your workforce, but also the training to use it, is really important. I'm going to gloss over my recommendations, because actually I think I've got a better one. Taking the robot out of the human is it's a really big statement. It's a lovely soundbite. I'm really glad I wrote it. But what I want to invite you all to think about is this. RPA, and I'll try and speak on behalf of both UiPath and Automation and pretty much any other RPA vendor. It's not about RPA. First of all, it's not about RPA. It's about the digital worker. RPA is brilliant. Yeah, it does rules-based, process-driven, all of those repetitive things. We have nice hard data in an Excel spreadsheet or an ERP system or a relational database or whatever. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. Those are your low-hanging fruit. And should you do that? Absolutely yes. But you also need to start thinking about what are the other things that go next? What about cognitive technologies? What about real-time analytics? What about all that stuff put together? Because we don't look at the world as an RPA vendor. We look at the world as a digital worker vendor. Because there is more to life than that nice, hard, structured data. 70% of data in companies is semi-structured data. It's in PDFs, it's in emails, it's in natural text, natural language. So how do you access that? So we invite people to think more about how do you access digital workers? How do you create a digital workforce that augments and supports your human workforce? And again, going back to that, what are the things that your human workforce are brilliant at? They're good at creativity, they're good at writing copy, they're good at coming up with new strategies. They're good sometimes, other people, so I've heard, are good at standing on stage and prancing about, things that robots are not very good at. What's your robot workforce, your digital workforce good at? It's all that rules-based stuff. It's taking stuff that you can figure out what's the rule there, what's the process, how do you automate that, how do you go for that very high accuracy, that very high rate of repetition. A worker that works 24 hours a day, never makes mistakes, never complains, no matter how boring the task they're doing is, even if that task is vital. And that's something you sometimes cannot ask humans to do. There are, I used to be CRO of a telecoms company, and there were management reports that we used to build once a month about retention and new customers and churn and all that fun stuff, if you've ever worked for a telco, and we'd submit them to the board. I would love to have done those reports daily. I could have extracted some real business insight out of that. Why didn't I get them done daily? I could have asked my team to do it. The reason is they would have left because it was really dull. It was pulling data from all these different spreadsheets, databases, Salesforce, the Ofcom complaints portal, and putting it all into a report. And I hated doing it, but it was critical to the business. And doing it monthly, fine. If I'd said to them, actually, guys, you need to do this like daily, not fine. A perfect candidate for automation. So figuring out what are the things that humans are good at and letting them focus on that. What are the things that digital workers are good at? Let them focus on that. I'm going to go a bit further. I would challenge everyone here in every company, don't start from the bottom. It's really easy. Yeah, you can say, here's a process, accounts payable, accounts receivable, we can build some automations, there we go, we've got a nice tactical solution. Look at it the other way round. Put yourself forward 25 years, as Ewan said, 25 years into the future, 12% of jobs are gone, there's a new breed of jobs. Start building for that future. Challenge yourselves. Say to yourselves, right, our office, let's assume in 25 years' time, 20% of the roles here are going to be done by digital workers. So let's start building for that now. Think big about it. Look at your human workforce. How many of them should have a digital assistant? Pick a number, 50%? Because that technology is here. Whether you use us, whether you use UiPath, it doesn't matter. That technology is here to take people, whatever they're doing, and give them a digital worker to work either alongside them, either somebody who actually collaborates with them, they use them all the time, they work in a call center, somebody phones up, wants to change their address, bing, you fire it with a digital worker, you tell them what you want to do, they go off and do it. What do you do while they're doing that? You stay on the phone, you talk to that customer, you do something only a human can do. You engage, you interact, you maybe pass the time of day, you discuss, if you're English, you discuss the weather, that's what we do. But you do something only a human can do. Maybe you have other digital colleagues who sit in the far corner and you don't interact with them every day. There's your accounts payable guy, and all he does is when invoices come in, he looks at those invoices and makes sure they pay them on time, da-da-da-da-da. Still vital to the business. But we're in a world where that technology exists today. We will look back in 5, 10, 25 years' time and go, wow, do you remember when order to cash was done by humans? Isn't that weird? Because it will be done by a digital worker. So that's the bit I'll leave you with. Digital workers are here. The future, as I see it, is that combination of human workers doing things only humans can do, human workers augmented by digital workers. And by the way, there's a great, I don't know if anyone went to any, we have a big show 3 or 4 times a year around the world called Imagine, and our key speaker this year was Garry Kasparov. And if you talk to Kasparov, the chess grandmaster, and say, what's the single best way to play chess? How do you get to the chess perfection? Is it you as a grandmaster? Arguably, the greatest grandmaster of all time? He says no. Is it Deep Blue? Is it the IBM supercomputer or a modern version? He goes, no, it's not. You ask Kasparov, and he says, it's a decent club player with a computer supporting them. He said, the few times I played a decent club player with a computer supporting them, they've wiped the floor with me in a way that Deep Blue didn't. As again, as Ewan says, that creativity, that spark that only humans can do, with that relentless processing power, that absolute accuracy, that total perfect recall that computers and robots have, that combination is unstoppable. So the future will be human workers doing things humans can do, human workers supported and augmented by their digital colleagues, and digital workers doing the things that robots, that computers are best at. Thank you very much.
Thank you, James.